The Paul Harrell Program.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. My name is Paul Harrell, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And joining us now, we have the senator from Senate District 5. Bryan King is back with us. Bryan, thank you, sir, for coming on.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me.
So let's just get to the news of the day. I mean, this is not why we originally scheduled you to come on the program, but do need to get your reaction. State Representative Bob Ballinger has announced today he's going to run for your Senate seat. What's your reaction?
Well, I think that, it's definitely open to anybody running. And I've told people that I've always said, just like I've done in the past, I always wait to go through the summer. I know with campaigns seem to be running, getting things get quicker and quicker and earlier. And, even now on the next president's election, people's already talking about who's going to run the next time. So that's just the way it seems to be going, but I'm not conforming to that. I've always said, I'll wait till the summer. And most of the time, if there's a primary, the campaign needs to start in the fall, and so that's the time I still think to do it. And Bob and I have been... we've been on different paths several times. I noticed in his announcement he said conservative Governor Asa Hutchinson. Well, some issues, yeah, kind of, and some other things. But on fiscal matters, no. I mean, he is not conservative at all. And I think it's evident down there by some of the recent comments. And you look at the fact that they're cutting the budget. We're not even in a recession. And so it's just way too much spending. And to me, too much spending and conservatism just doesn't go together.
Well, there's no question. I mean, the legislature has, with the governor, they've increased spending the last 3 years. I know that has been something that's been concerning to you. You've cited, that we used to have a surplus. And when you brought that up in committee during the special session to let's Senator Jim Hendren, for example, he tried to accuse you of wanting a surplus, which would mean that we were overtaxing the people. But and it was such a disingenuous argument because it was just his way of deflecting.
Right.
You obviously, but not having a surplus and continue to spend money and then having to come back and cut the budget. The reason I want to have you on, Senator King, is because in the paper today we've got record revenues for the month of May, and we have some quotes from the governor and others that says, it kind of makes it sound like all of a sudden they're fiscal conservatives because, hey, we had to tighten our belt and, we're still going to stay the course and that sort of thing. I mean, what kind of responsibility, what kind of credit goes to Governor Hutchinson when it comes to trimming back the money or the budget when the money's not there?
Yeah, it's not like I tweeted this. He seems to be confused that somehow he's in Washington, D.C., and just keeps spending money that won't, unfortunately, like his Washington, D.C. days, he can't just print more money or put more debt on. And so to take credit for something they're required by law to do is like me taking credit for driving 55 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit zone. I mean, so, once again, it's just the same politics, and that's what's made me very unpopular down there with the establishment. And it's just they keep making these comments, and the reality is the only reason we are not spending more money today is because the taxpayers didn't send them more money to spend. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. And then, of course, you got, the quest for revenue that happened in the last regular session a couple of months ago, just try to raise as much money as they can from us, more money from the taxpayers. And I think that is because they knew we were in such trouble going forward. And, it really comes back to having to pay for Medicaid expansion, in my opinion. And I wonder what your thoughts are on this, because this dawned on me today. I was reading some reports about some people, making these claims that, hey, we transferred 60,000 people off of the program and da-da-da-da. And they're saying all this like it's already happened. First of all, it hasn't happened. Second of all, I remember a time, and I want to know if you remember a time, Senator Bryan King, when the governor was in, the media, and his surrogates were in the media saying we needed many people on this program as we could because, that's the way we're going to get all this money. We don't need to cap enrollment because, we got to see what Washington, D.C. does, and we might get a block grant based on what we're spending now. And now all of a sudden we got to get rid of these people, and no one ever brings up that contradiction. Go ahead.
No, the media doesn't do that down there, and the reality is, that's exactly what Asa Hutchinson said. He said last year, we have got to have these people in the program because if you take these people off the program, you're going to have a hole in the budget, you're going to close schools, we can't fund highways. Remember how he tied everything to Medicaid expansion. And so it's just, once again, misleading Asa Hutchinson. And Bob Ballinger doesn't want to call Asa Hutchinson out. And so when you do, it puts you in, less than 20% of the people down there that sit there and tell exactly what's happening down there. I mean, they want conformists. That's what the establishment wants. That's why they didn't like Trump. That's why they still fight Trump today, is because he doesn't conform as, when you mess up and you're doing something like spending too much, you know what? You just don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. Okay? You just don't say anything about it. And if you do say something about it, you're treated like Trump.
Yeah.
And so that's what's been going on down there. They want Jim Hendren dismaying. Jim Hendren, doesn't want criticism when we were saying SB 96 was not going to end Obamacare in Arkansas. It was not going to change anything. And so the criticism came of it ends it. No, it didn't end it. And so that's what they don't want. They don't want somebody down there telling the truth. It's just like Senator Dismaying when I sit there questioning him. Same line of thinking what you were doing. Okay, Senator Dismaying, how on one hand have you continually said over the years that the state benefited from having people on private option Arkansas, maybe works, maybe not works.
Arkansas part-time works.
Yeah, and, possible part-time. So which is it? And so that's why they don't want anybody questioning them. And if they do, you're treated like Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
Bob Ballinger won't. That's one thing Bob won't do. He won't say this. And it's not just those things. It's just like on the RFRA bill that was ran a few years ago. It's just like the line item veto scam.
Do you think
that they ran?
I'm sorry, Brian, but you brought up. Do you think the governor's going to support State Representative Ballinger over you?
I don't know. I mean, I doubt that the governor does not want. I mean, I'm sure he's not going to support me, and that's fine because, like I said, this governor has overspent. And I can go back to the newspaper quotes a couple of years ago when I warned you about it. In a personal meeting, they keep saying, J.R. Davis keeps saying things like I don't show up. Well, I showed up this last session. I met the governor. I told him personally, I said, Governor, you're going to have to cut the budget. You're trying to spend too much money, and you're going to have to make things. His direct quote back to me that day was, Brian, we are on the right track. Okay, and understand this is the same guy that criticized me that said last time that when I said the DHS appropriation bill was unsustainable, I said, and then he said, his direct quote was, this is the same guy talking about the budget, which can't understand that he's not in Washington, D.C., and can just, talk his way out of it. But he said after he got the DHS appropriation bill that it was sustainable. So now he's saying it's not sustainable.
Yeah, he came around. He finally came around. He said it's not sustainable. We got to get these people off the program. So will he come around next time and say, "Oh, and he did"? I mean, he had to cut money. I mean, he had to do what you were saying he had to do because he cut $70 million and then $43 million. And so, I mean, that's Bryan King 2, Asa Hutchinson 0.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm wanting to be right. But the thing about it is, had they took the measures 2 years ago, and there's going to be more, Paul, coming out that I'm going to be illustrating my point. And it's very unpopular down there. I mean, you're in the minority down there whenever you sit there and say these things. I mean, just look at the Medicaid disclosure bill. I mean, it has made me extremely unpopular.
I think so.
With colleagues down there that sit there, and all of a sudden, unfortunately, we have headline after headline. I mean, Bob Ballinger didn't support Medicaid disclosure. He seems to think that lawyers should be exempted from any type of scrutiny, and I don't. And I think that you're going to see clear, obvious differences. You look at the FOI bill, for example. Certainly, in the Senate, fought to kill that bill. And where is Republicans getting into that they spend themselves into financial trouble like they have? They sit there and want to have less transparency and less disclosure about things. And so I have real problems with that. I'm not for that. I'm for keeping the transparency out there where you know what's going on or can know what's going on with your government.
Absolutely.
I'm for financial responsibility, because the reality is what Governor Hutchinson doesn't want to talk about. Okay, he wants to act like, and like on the spending thing, he wants to flat out mislead people and say, I'm tightening the budget. No, Governor. Arkansas law doesn't allow you to spend more money that's coming in. You're not in Washington, D.C., that you can just keep printing more money. We look at the crime issue. I was trying to come up with solutions to solve the crime issue. It's going to take money, folks, to do that. So Governor Hutchinson sits there and says he's tightening the budget. What he's saying is that, number one, he's spending record amounts of dollars on Medicaid and welfare.
Yep,
okay,
that's true.
Record amounts. Okay. At the same time, we have a crime problem that needs attention, and we need tax dollars to go in there and try and solve this problem. But his nephew, Jeremy Hutchinson, who's been in charge of judiciary down there for 2 different terms, came up with a proposal that's not all bad, does a few good things, but in the whole scheme of things of addressing the problem that we have out there is anemic. And Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, another one, fought Medicaid disclosure. Wonder why, Senator Hutchinson?
Well, yeah. Well, let me say this. You mentioned, 20% of the people down there will actually tell what's going on, and I would just say none more than you in terms of your bluntness and your boldness, and I think that's very welcome. I mean, I welcome it, and I know a lot of people don't. But if you talk about how, I would say 80%. I mean, if 20% actually tell what's the real situation down there, I would say 80% don't want your Medicaid disclosure bill passed. Like, they would not want to have to disclose the money that they get on the side as legislators from health care entities.
Yeah, that we vote to send billions of dollars to. So, I mean, it's not just that area down there, Paul. It is a continual talk and it's just like somebody out there that's got congestive heart. These guys act like they're the surgeon that diagnose somebody correctly and brag on themselves. It's like somebody out there that's got congestive heart failure and they're having heart pains and their heart's about to explode out of their chest. They need a knee replacement, and their gallbladder's bothering them. I mean, Asa Hutchinson and these guys can sit down there and go and try and fix somebody's gallbladder and act like they saved their life. And it was just like this last session, rolling this amount of people off. Had it been in the first year after Medicaid expansion, I might have voted for it. But at this point in time, when you have 300 and something thousand people on it, it's costing more than ever. It's a scam. This insurance Medicaid expansion, the people of Arkansas have been scammed out of millions and millions of dollars. I mean, Bob Ballinger, on one hand, you want to get back to Bob and go and make the announcement today, and it's nothing he doesn't know. He puts on postcard, he fought waste, fraud, and abuse. What did you do, Bob? He took credit for something that I did and worked on and tried to get out there, and that's what I'm tired of. I would rather deal with a Democrat that's straightforward, because at least you know where you stand and where they're coming from, than these Republicans down there that want to close transparency, have less transparency to know what your government's doing, to have not come up with long-term solutions, even though they may be tough decisions, to fund highways. Highway bill, complete failure. You have another situation where this governor sits there, and we have a situation where the higher ed people, students out there, that when you go in enrollment for this next fall, guess what? They're going to pay 3% more. You have a lot of these administrators in universities that waste money. Their salaries are exorbitant in some cases, and they get amount of raises they shouldn't get. And you sit there and they're going to raise students' tuition, and then all of a sudden the governor's going to give them $10 million more. You know what? That is exactly why Donald Trump is president. They are tired of this talk and talk and talk. And you know what, Governor Hutchinson, if you want to sit there and point out the things about the Medicaid unsustainable, sustainable, go back to my quotes, go back to my spending. If I need to retract something, I'm more than happy to do that. But they would rather discredit and try and take out the person telling the truth than to go actually solve the problems.
Yeah. I'm reading here from Representative Ballinger's announcement, part of his announcement. He says, Arkansans want effective leadership in the legislature. They want to know when they send someone to Little Rock, they are sending someone who will work with others to move Arkansas forward. There should be no room for bickering and grandstanding at our state capitol. Obviously, since you're the senator for the district that he's run, I mean, obviously that's directed at you. What's your reaction to that?
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, I would rather just say, Bob, come out and say something like that. And you know what? I mean, was it, like I said, I would rather I be wrong about our financial situation, that we wasn't having to experience the cuts and the money was coming in. But I've seen consistently those people continually ignore the spending problems. I said the same way on the highway plan to use surplus money. That was not a plan. People need plans. They need to know they have a route and the good and the bad in it, and you need to have a debate about it, okay? You don't need to do what Governor Hutchinson did and sit there and come up with a line-item veto scam and scheme around the Arkansas Constitution.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened.
The Constitution was set up and the rules were set up to follow to protect the people of Arkansas. And when you can sit there and you don't call it out. I mean, Paul, even if we got to end a program that we were for, but we meet the rules to be able to get it, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah, there absolutely is, and back to the getting 60,000 people off, that they now say is a good thing. They used to think we need as many people on there as we can. I mean, look, I understand why people would vote for it. I mean, I get it, because they're going to hope that it's going to actually be a work requirement that's got teeth, and and hope for all of that. But the bottom line is, we now know why they didn't really want to debate what the work requirement would be. I mean, what you were being asked to vote on was to give unelected bureaucrats and DHS the authority to create the waiver and apply with the Trump administration. And now we see that they only have to work 20 hours a week. And here's my question, Brian. Maybe you know this, but I was looking at some of the exemptions. If you don't get the 20 hours a week, you don't get kicked off for 3 months. Is that accurate? Is that what you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I really don't know. I mean, I would like to know more details set in stone before I vote on it. Remember how John Seelig and David Sanders, Jonathan Dismang, remember that guy, he's had more broken promises than somebody that got turned down 7 times by, different people going to prom or something. I mean, so he's sitting down there, and we were told that these people were going to make their own decisions in the health care plans they did. That wound up not being true. The vast majority of them had theirs picked by a bureaucrat down there in Little Rock. Now, they didn't make their own decisions on which health care plan. So once again, I want to know give us some things up front before you do it. And the other thing is, too, look at the long term of this. And everything's a cycle in that if you do roll these people off and the uncompensated care goes through the bill, and you have UMS and these hospitals, the same ones that influenced these other ones before, coming back a year or two now saying, hey, we need money for uncompensated care now.
Yeah. Well,
so, I mean, in the end, we don't know if we're going to save any more money. I can tell you one thing that is a clear record when it comes to Jonathan Dismang saying something about how much something's going to cost. you can always bet it's going to be wrong and millions of dollars in the wrong way, in the right way.
Yeah. Well, and all these guys never lose credibility. That they never switch the leadership because there's clearly so much money that people are making outside of politics in the special interest. They're doing everything they can to keep these people in positions of power because they want that revenue stream. Senator Bryan King, I appreciate you coming on the program. The last thing I'd say is, from what I understand, you have to have 80 hours a month of approved activities, either holding a job or taking high school or college vocational classes, participating in activities or programs and that sort of thing. But you don't get kicked off unless you fail to do that for 3 months. So my question is, and I haven't got an answer to that, if you don't get your 80 hours a month for 3 months, but then 1 month before you get kicked off, you do get your 80 hours, do you automatically get to stay on? And I don't have an answer to that, and I'd love
to keep track of this. DHS, the same people that can't keep track if you're dead or not, they're going to keep track whether you're pregnant or you're working. How much is that going to cost?
A lot of money.
I mean, you got to understand, we've spent $250 million to try to keep up with the system that had less requirements to it or less things to be verified than this other system, which is going to add so many more things to it. So where's the cost of having to do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, they've got to build another website, so we won't hold our breath.
No,
Senator
but
Bryan
you can
King.
make sure that Jonathan Dismang and some of these guys are going to make sure their Medicaid butt friends that they're going to protect them. I can assure you that.
All right. Well, hey, Senator King, you're welcome on the program anytime, and be sure to let me know, when you make your decision about running for re-election. Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, folks. We got to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program. Back in a moment.